Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayan Namaskritya Naram Cha Narottam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tado Jayamudiriye Nashtabhrai Yavadvetu Nityam Bhagavatasya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. So continuing with the discussion on Prabhupada Lilamrita by Srila Swami. Prabhupada is in India, in Delhi. He is in the Prime Minister office and ready to see Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. And he had made 10 points that he wanted to discuss with Indira Gandhi. The other points on Srila Prabhupada's list was scriptural directions for how the Prime Minister could make her leadership Krishna conscious in the spirit of the great Rajarishis of the Vedic age. These were the same tenets of God-conscious leadership he preached wherever he went. And he had deep conviction that if the world leaders would apply them, an era of peace, prosperity, and happiness would dawn. And, because it's all mentioned in Vedas, so nothing is wrong in the Vedas. It's just how we implement it. Depends on that. Indira Gandhi had a tendency towards authoritative control, so she should exercise it in terms of Vedic directions. Then her rule would become most effective and beneficial. So that was Prabhupada's viewpoint. A government official opened the door to Srila Prabhupada's car, ushered him into the house, and brought him before the Prime Minister. As Prabhupada entered the room, Mrs. Gandhi stood up. Although she greeted him cordially and offered him a seat, he could immediately detect that she was distracted, fearful for her life. She openly admitted it and added that this was not, therefore, a good time for their meeting. Because that time, emergency rule and killing of Bangladesh Prime Minister happened, and there were chances of hits on her life as well. And if I'm not wrong, if I have read somewhere correctly, that every night she would sleep in a different room because they just didn't know who was going to attack from where. So the question is, and so much of fear and for her life from enemies, from inside people also, and other things going on. I mean, what's the fun in getting into this politics? I don't get it. I'm sure, I mean, Modi ji also takes all precautions, all sorts of precautions. But yes, somebody has to lead. I'm not, there has to be a leader. But if somebody makes this as a career, and no, this is only what I'm going to do instead of a service, then what's the point? Living so fearfully. Prabhupada felt that she would have preferred not to meet at all, but was allowing it only because she had promised. Her agreeing to see him, he felt, was an indication that she had some attraction for spiritual life. But he understood that on this visit at least, he could not introduce the extensive advice he had been contemplating. Mrs. Gandhi complimented Srila Prabhupada on the work he was doing all over the world. They are good boys, he replied, and he asked if she could arrange for permanent visas. She agreed, but again mentioned her present anxiety. They soon ended their talk, and Srila Prabhupada left. A few days later, while still in New Delhi, Srila Prabhupada received a letter from Rameshwar. The BBT in Los Angeles was miraculously fulfilling Srila Prabhupada's order to publish 17 volumes in 2 months. So 17 volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita. The composers, editors, artists, and workers had ecstatically finished the marathon on schedule. When the first books had come back from the printers and had been offered on the altar of the many Dwarkadhish, the devotees had cried in transcendental bliss, chanting again and again the mantras to Srila Prabhupada. So this is how much they loved Srila Prabhupada. They were feeling the potency of the order of the spiritual master, seeing themselves as instruments in carrying out what had once seemed an impossible request. So in 2 months, 17 volumes, and it's like they had to do the editing, translation, transliteration. Nobody knew Bengali, but they did it. Today, our composer finished the last volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita. By Wednesday next week, August 20th, all volumes will be at the printer. Now, they're just starting to compose the fifth canto, and the entire canto will definitely be at the printer by Vyas Puja Day. After promising delivery of books by October at the latest, the letter was signed by about 60 devotees, your unworthy servants at ISKCON Press. On their behalf, Rameshwar stated, "We have lost all desire to do anything except be engaged in producing and distributing your transcendental books by the millions in every town and village." Srila Prabhupada wrote back the next day from Delhi, "Regarding your desire for all 12 cantos, you will get it, rest assured. Your so much ardent desire will be fulfilled by Krishna." On August 21st, Rameshwar sent Srila Prabhupada a telegram. By the mercy of Lord Balram, Nityananda, the last volume of Chaitanya Charitamrita is leaving today for the printer. By your mercy and divine order, it is done. See, they really worked. Although Srila Prabhupada travelled on to Vrindavan, the devotees were able to dispatch advance copies of all 15 volumes to him by his 80th birthday on August 31st. Just after Prabhupada observed the ceremony in the temple, the devotee arrived in Vrindavan with the final 6 volumes of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. With great relish and satisfaction, Srila Prabhupada examined the books. He was pleased with the artwork and quickly became absorbed in reading the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. He felt so inspired, he remarked to the devotees in Vrindavan that he was thinking of stopping all touring and just staying in Vrindavan and translating. I wish he had done that. The reciprocation of the devotees at ISKCON Press was so sincere that it increased Srila Prabhupada's desire to reciprocate with them. He wrote to, "My dear Rameshwar and company, you have taken seriously the publishing and also the distribution of these books, and that is the success of our mission. You have taken seriously this work, and I know that my Guru Maharaj is pleased with you because he wanted this. So by this endeavor, you will all go back home, back to God." See, by pleasing spiritual master, Krishna is pleased. And Krishna is pleased, he can grant anything. And Prabhupada himself is saying, you will all go back home, back to God. Well, that doesn't mean they don't have to perform devotional service, but the service that they performed of publishing his books, that really pleased Prabhupada. And now, obviously, Prabhupada is not writing any books. So, but if we distribute his books, that pleases him. More and more people get an opportunity to read his books and perfect their lives. Although Srila Prabhupada had mentioned that he would like to sit in Vrindavan and simply translate Srimad Bhagavatam, his stay there was characterized by intensive management, not by writing. He had presided over the grand opening of the Krishna Balram Mandir 4 months earlier. And now he would demonstrate how the temple should be done. The Krishna Balram Mandir was a Vedic temple complex at a famous holy place, and it was being scrutinized by persons already strongly opinionated on how a temple should be run. Immediately, Prabhupada found discrepancies. In the guest house, which was for guests, not disciples, he found married disciples living with the children. This was not proper, he said, and these families would have to find other quarters nearby or leave Vrindavan. He also found problems with the plumbing, the municipal sewage system, the financial mismanagement, the deity worship, the cleanliness, and the devotees' behavior. Almost every area of temple life and every devotee required special attention. In the smallest discrepancies, Prabhupada would sometimes see the essence of all problems and he would instantly point it out. And because his disciples took his words with utmost seriousness as coming directly from Krishna, his reprimands were often devastating. Prabhupada was a difficult taskmaster. A Vaishnava is said to be as soft as a rose and as hard as a thunderbolt. But Prabhupada began showing more the thunderbolt side of his person. Sometimes a neophyte's conception of the spiritual master is that he must always be peaceful and pleased with everything that happens, and that this is a sign of his being situated in transcendental consciousness. Srila Prabhupada, however, demonstrated many moods, including anger. So, anger was there, but that was just to correct his disciples if they're making mistakes. And this transcendental anger, why is it transcendental? First of all, it won't go on for a long time, just for a short time. And then he would revert back to his normal mood very soon, very fast. Just like in, I believe it was in France, Prabhupada was there to install the deities. Preparations were going on, yajna was supposed to happen, and somehow the yajna wasn't going right. Either they didn't have all the ingredients properly managed, and things were not going right. And Prabhupada was getting angry. He was chastising his disciples, you're not making proper arrangements for yajna, for the deities, and this and that. And one devotee who had probably joined just a week before, he saw Swamiji getting angry. And he had only learned one thing in 1 week, that because he also used to lose his temper, and devotees would tell him, just chant. Whenever he would get angry, just chant. So he came to Prabhupada and he told Prabhupada, just chant. Prabhupada was getting angry. And he told Prabhupada, just chant. And Prabhupada looked at him and he said, well, I think that's a good idea. And he just picked up his beads and started chanting. So Prabhupada's anger was not like when we get angry. His anger was still transcendental. In its material form, anger, krodha is described in Bhagavad Gita as occurring when one's lust, calm, cannot be fully satisfied. A true sadhu, therefore, because he does not have any lusty desires, does not become possessed by anger. So yes, we're not calm. Calm means when we want to satisfy our senses, enjoy our senses, and it's not happening. Whatever. Calm could be in any form. And we get angry. Krodhat bhakti sammoha sammohat smriti vikrama. And then sammoha or illusion happens, but not with Prabhupada. The Vaishnava poet Narottam Das Thakur, however, declares that anger may also be used in serving Krishna. Narottam Das gives the example of Hanuman, the eternal servant of Lord Ram, who displayed his great anger in fighting against Ravan and the other demoniac enemies of the Lord. Rupa Goswami also wrote in the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu that a devotee should not tolerate blasphemy to Krishna or to the Vaishnavas, and that his response might justifiably be transcendental anger. Even Lord Krishna incited the anger of the non-violent Arjuna, inducing him to fight, and that fighting was transcendental, whereas Arjuna's reluctance to fight was material. So this also is one of the points people who don't read or don't understand Bhagavad Gita properly, they actually blame Krishna. Krishna incited Arjun to fight the war. Arjun was a peace-loving man. He wanted to leave the war. It's Krishna who's the problem. Let's have peace, peace. But no, whatever Krishna says or does, that is dharma. And at that time, that war was necessary to establish dharma, dharmic leadership all over the world. If Duryodhana had continued with his leadership, and if Duryodhana had agreed to give 5 villages, or then actually Krishna asked for 5 homes for 5 Pandavas, then do we think war wouldn't have happened? War still would have happened. Maybe later, because Duryodhana was not proper leader, leading uh, proper in the proper scriptural, he still would have attacked Pandavas. The war definitely would have happened. So, not just so-called peace is always a solution. That doesn't mean every war is the right war and happening now. I'm not saying that. But philosophically, not every time peace is the right solution. Sometimes war has to happen. Among sentimentalists and impersonalists, however, the image persists that a sadhu should never show anger. So this is the real thought. The sadhu means no anger. Even, I mean, it is called, of course, we are not sadhus. But when we put on dhoti kurta and tilak and kantimala, having chanting deeds, people think that, oh, we have become perfect sadhus. And of course, perfect sadhu doesn't mean no anger, but according to their perception, it is, oh, you cannot get angry. You're a sadhu. Of course, we have to try not to get angry at every little thing, every nonsense people do or say. But if it is against deities or devotees, we have to. When at a large Pandal festival in Delhi, Srila Prabhupada had shown anger toward a man who spoke against Krishna. Many in the audience had misunderstood. Some had even walked off. Prabhupada's disciples could accept his anger. They even welcomed it theoretically, but to bear it was difficult. The spiritual master must cut through his student's false ego to engage that student in pure service. The Guru's show of anger, therefore, is good for the disciple. According to Chanakya Pandit, one should not be lenient with sons and disciples. Unless he deals strictly with them, he will spoil them. So there is a saying, spare the rod, spoil the child. But again, one can get angry uh, to rectify, to fix his son or disciple only up to a certain age. None. Forever. But one has to discipline his son or daughter also, his child. He has to discipline. Prabhupada's anger in Vrindavan was not, however, a mere exercise in student training. He strongly desired to see the temple solidly established. He trusted that his disciples were sufficiently loyal to him to withstand the pain of chastisement and take it for what it was, mercy. It was pure mercy. But at the same time, if I start getting angry at somebody, suppose in a class or in yatra, and I say, oh, I'm getting angry at you because it's my mercy towards you, that'll be nonsense. I'm not such an authority as Prabhupada. If some situation is like that, that is a different story. But not that thinking that, oh, I'm giving you my mercy. No, I'm creating karma for myself. If I'm unnecessarily getting angry, or unreasonably getting. and I might be committing an offense. I have to be careful. What was true for Prabhupada? It is true philosophically, but individually we have to see where do we stand. Prabhupada was vigilant about the devotees' attendance at the morning devotional program in the temple. Calling for the temple president, he asked why some devotees were regularly absent. Mangala Arati, he said, was very important and everyone must attend. Punctuality was also important. The exact time for the Mangala Arati would vary according to the clock, he said, but it must always be 1.5 hours before sunrise. Yes, that's the principle. 1.5 hours before sunrise. But the problem with that is, now every day we cannot calculate when the sunrise. We can calculate, calendars are there, but we cannot change the timing every day. So we have made a rule, 4:30 a.m. Now in the West, I was in Detroit. Now Detroit, winter time, it gets very cold and sun doesn't rise until say 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. sometimes. So we cannot have Mangalarati at 7:30 a.m. and then have, well, theoretically we can, but practically it was not possible. Because then everybody has to get on with the services. So the rule has become 4:30 a.m. for Mangalarati, following India. Or if we go to Europe, like Norway, sometimes there is no sunrise. Whole day it's dark. So then the rule became 4:30 a.m. Prabhupada would take his morning walk, timing it so he would be back in the temple a few moments before the deity doors were supposed to open for darshan. Once when he was waiting with all the devotees gathered at him, he looked at his watch and then asked Akshanand Swami, what is the time? Aware that Srila Prabhupada was speaking with exactitude, Akshanand replied that it was 30 seconds after 7:30. Prabhupada shook his head and with a resigned look he said, it is very difficult to be a Brahmin. 30 seconds late. Why are they taking so long to dress the deity? Akshanand explained that the deity dressing took about 1.5 hours. They are simply lazy, Prabhupada replied. How long should it take, Srila Prabhupada? Half an hour at the most. Half an hour. And I know when I used to dress Radha Parthasarthi, it would take me almost 2 hours. 5:15 we start, and 7:15 was the time for Darshanarthi, and it was right before 7:15 when I would finish. Akshananda was flabbergasted since he knew of no pujari who would come even close to that. He remained silent. What's the difficulty? Prabhupada challenged. Half an hour at most. Shortly after Prabhupada had arrived, he had noticed that the path leading to the front gate was not clean. He had complained strongly, why this is not clean? It should be clean by the time daybreak comes. I want to see this clean. The temple commander, a young Englishman from Australia named Hari Sauri, was supposed to supervise all the cleaning, but he had taken much of it for himself. After hearing Srila Prabhupada's remarks about the pathway, Hari Sauri had resolved to rectify the problem. Immediately after Mangalarati, he would run out to the front of the temple, throw water on the stone pathways, and madly run the large squeegee over the front steps and walkway, so that by the time Prabhupada came by, most of the area would be sparkling clean. And by the time he would return from his walk, all the outdoor walkways would be clean. Srila Prabhupada didn't say anything further about the walkway, which seemed to be a positive sign. So Hari Shauri Prabhu, he served Prabhupada very nicely. He became his secretary also later on. And he's still doing wonderful service. Okay, I guess we can stop here. See if anybody has any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, what is the timing for Sandhya Aarti? Fix.
Sandhya Aarti time varies. Winter it is earlier, summer it is half an hour here and there they do. That time varies. But Mangala Aarti time they kept it at 4:30 every day.
Acha. Okay.
So, Prabhuji, at home, sometimes we can do late Mangala Aarti or no?
Oh yeah, yeah. At home you
Okay.
go with your schedule. It's in the temple.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank
Jai
you.
Srila
Thank you.
Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.